Welcome back to FBI, Farmers Bureau Investigation, airing on NFB, National Farm Broadcasting. I'm your host, Hannah Stahlbaumer, and this week we are investigating topsoil preservation and land management with local farmers here in Boone County. Just to catch my listeners up on this ethical topic for today, land and soil management practices have changed significantly over the years as the intrinsic value of land has become important to farmers, producers, and consumers. Farmers have begun to change management practices of their soil and land as the scarcity and value of land has increased drastically. Instrumental values such as higher yields, increased fertility, and simply healthier soil is another factor that has changed practices. Farmers have become educated and are making ethically sound decisions to their land practices. Today I have brought in a few very experienced farmers to cover this topic. First off, I have Kaylee Brooks. She's a dairy farmer who produces her own corn for her livestock. Thanks for coming in today, Kaylee. What can you tell us about cover crops?
Thank you, Hannah, for that lovely introduction and having me on the show today. So one of the major changes that have been implemented recently on the farm for soil preservation is the use of cover crops. Our land used to be left fallow during the winter, and we didn't really see a need or benefit in placing cover crops in the soil over winter because, that's just extra money on top of what we already have to pay during the year. But recently, the government has been providing subsidies and programs that influences farmers' decisions to make an ethical choice, so we decided to try it ourselves. Some of these subsidies range from legumes to a mix of different species, with prices ranging between $24.50 per acre to $35 an acre. The ethical reason for choosing these cover crops to preserve the soil is just for future generations, while also improving this topsoil health for its current use. This includes the use of red clover to put back nitrogen in soil, which is really good for our corn that we produce, and other plants such as rye that adds back to the organic matter in the actual soil profile. So it's really the aspect of the topsoil that farmers are generally looking to improve on. So to wrap up, these programs influence farmers to make an ethical decision that benefits both their topsoil and ensures the future farming across the Midwest. Everyone should at least try cover crops at least once in the off season because we've really seen a benefit in our personal soils. It's truly about giving back to our soils as much as we take from it because we have future generations of farmers to think about.
Thank you, Kaylee. I appreciate your input on cover crops. Also today we have Bailey Horsemeyer, who is a research associate for Beck's Hybrids. What can you tell us about crop rotation and how your company does this, Bailey?
So Hannah, crop rotation is basically the season-by-season process of changing crops that are grown in a particular field. So normally crops are changed season by season in an order of succession. So there might be a sweet corn, broccoli, winter wheat rotation or an alfalfa wheat fallow rotation. Both are good examples of this practice. Probably a more common practice that we'll see here in the Midwest would be a corn-soybean rotation. So crop rotation does have many benefits. It reduces the need for fertilizer. So legumes such as alfalfa replace nitrogen that's removed by grain crops like wheat. By naturally breaking weed, disease, and insect cycles, pesticides and field operation costs are reduced. Water quality is protected by cover crops as they prevent excess nutrients or chemicals from entering the water supplies. Cover crops increase soil organic matter and also allow for better soil erosion control. It creates diversity within the operation, and also cover crops provide cover and food for wildlife. So overall, thinking of this from an ethical standpoint, not only are we seeing instrumental value with this, we're using the land, we're making a profit off the land, but we're also seeing intrinsic value. So we're taking from the land, but we're also putting back into it. We're trying to give back, and I think crop rotations is one way that we are definitely able to give back to our farmland.
Thanks, Bailey. That was some really good insight you have there. Last but not least, we have Sabrina Morris. She is a PhD student who is studying water quality and is going to discuss fertilizer and buffer zones. I'll leave it to you, Sabrina.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm happy to be here. There are many things necessary for the production of crops. These things include nitrogen, phosphate, and potash. The ideal situation is that the appropriate amount of fertilizer is applied to the crops and it takes up all the nutrients. If an excess amount is applied, it then stays in the topsoil and has the potential to leach into the water system, get lost in the air, or run off. This can lead to ethical debates with farmers who are doing what is best for their crops and for people who are worried about what's in their water. There are a few things that can help with this risk. One of these is making sure that farmers are reading the labels on the fertilizers, to use the proper amounts, and to ensure that there isn't any excess that can potentially leach. Another way is by planting buffers, such as plants or trees on borders of the fields, for example. Back to you, Hannah.
Huge thank you to you guys coming in here today. The listeners will appreciate hearing some insight to the ethical changes of land management from local farmers. All the topics we've discussed here today relate back to the environmentalist Aldo Leopold's land ethic essay. According to Leopold, not all human interference with land is morally wrong. If the land is benefiting, like it will from these land management practices, we will not only be valuing the land instrumentally, but intrinsically as well. Overall, many people, including farmers, do not have an appropriate land ethic. As farmers, we have a love and appreciation for the land we raise our crops on, so we should show that. We must apply land management practices like those we have discussed today to bring about an appropriate land ethic to others, especially those who are not directly in relation to the land. That will be all today. See you back next Wednesday for another BI on NFB.
All sources and information presented in this documentary were brought to you by these citations.